What's up, you absolutely wonderful Magento 11 friends of mine? Joseph here with yet another practice test question. This one is going to test your knowledge of an area that we rarely delve into. This one is one of my favorites for a long time. I love each question that I put out. I mean, I guess I should, right? I'm writing the questions, but this question came from a scenario I fought through just a week or two ago. And I was like thinking about what practice test question I'm going to do today. I was like, I think I can boil that one down into a practice test question. So hear me out. But before we jump into this practice test question, as always, I want to make sure that you are aware of Meet Magento UK coming up here in, less than a week. Folks, it's less than a week away. Make sure you are, if you're going to come to this show, conference, whatever you want to call it, make sure you have your tickets, and I look forward to meeting you there. I am super excited to be there in person here, and again, less than a week. So without further ado, let's jump in and take a peek at this question. What does it say? Well, you already probably hopefully answered the question, so let's look at it, and then we'll look at some possible answers for this. You have a report that the admin area is very slow. You cannot replicate the problem, but you do see a new relic that there are a significant number of operations on the Magento bulk table. How do you resolve this problem? All right. This one was interesting. Kind of like we talk about in the art of e-commerce debugging. When you go through several different mechanisms to try to find this solution, and yet nothing allows us to replicate it. And I think this hits on one of those tricky areas, because for us, replication is the key that unlocks the door to a solution. But in this case, I was unable to replicate it, and the client was very able to replicate it. And so we start breaking down what could be the difference. And let's look at these answers and see what could possibly be going on here. A, Magento bulk is associated with an admin user, and the module is overloading a table. A module is overloading the table. Okay, that's possible. If you've done work with Magento bulk, maybe you know the answer to this one. Maybe this is correct. Maybe it isn't. So if you're taking the working through a test, and you don't, how do I say this? You haven't maybe had much experience with this. We have to just move on. We say, okay, I mean, it's plausible, right? The test question specifically calls out Magento bulk table, and this answer does call it out as well, so maybe there's an association. Maybe. But also, Magento bulk in the question could also be a distractor. There you go. There's a good one. This could be a distractor. So let's keep reading. B, the admin user needs to log out to clear the session. All right. This is a possibility. However, in my experience, the admin doesn't just slow down. The admin crashes if the session gets overloaded, literally because the session becomes too big. And so you have to just log out and log back in, and the problem is solved. So this doesn't necessarily match the criteria that we heard in the actual question itself. So I would put this on as possible status. A is unknown. B is possible status. Okay, C, Magento is processing values from Magento bulk table real time, which slows admin requests. Okay, what's wrong with this answer? I am not aware of a way that Magento processes values from Magento bulk in real time. It's always in the background, it's asynchronously. Kicked off via cron, whether it's coming from the MySQL table directly or whatever, it's not happening in real time. So we can axe C. That's not an answer, right? So, but again, this is where this is really good to study some of this stuff, because this is on at least the expert developer test. I don't think it's on the it's not on the professional level test. So C is no longer an answer. It's between A and B. Now, we're going to have to jump over into this system to see exactly what's going on here. And this is where the light bulb moment kicked off for me here. So this is the table that I specifically investigated. Magento bulk, and so I found that this was associated in New Relic. However, we have a tremendous number of these rows here for user ID of 8. Now, I'm not going to go look at user ID 8 because this is our client database right here. However, user ID 8 it has a a stupid number of rows in here. And ultimately what was happening was this combined with the status was, well, basically if it was the complete, the status was also being loaded in and processed. This was actually being utilized for the bulk operation UI component. And so as a result, the user ID was, in this case, there's 780. We added a couple filters in. This is specifically related to TaxJar, but it could be any other module that uses Magento bulk table. TaxJar was specifically loading in all these records under this user ID of 8, which caused this user to have a ridiculously slow load time. As a result, A is the correct answer. And it's problems like this that become difficult, right? So if you have experienced a situation like this, especially related to Magento bulk, you immediately know the answer. And that's why this type of question, my goal is that you take a moment to dig in and say, okay, how does Magento bulk work? What tables are associated with Magento bulk? How can I understand this part of the system better? Even if you take 15 minutes to do a brief overview, you will be so much better off as a result. And that's my challenge to you today. Take a few minutes, understand the Magento bulk table, understand how this fits into the system, how this UI component could literally crash. Like, I'm talking about 60-second load times here. 60-second time to first byte could literally crash the entire site because of a good practice using the Magento bulk table gone wrong. Too many in that table. And so this was also another lesson to me, and I think I've talked about this somewhat recently, in that we say, okay, I can't replicate it, so it's not a problem. I hammer this in the book, The Art of E-Commerce Debugging. That is a handicap. But it is by no means that this is not a problem. If you cannot replicate the problem and the customer can replicate the problem, then this is definitely an issue. Okay, if something happens one time, I personally think it's best to hold off, unless it's catastrophic. Hold off until you get to the second recurrence. Then there might be demonstrable ROI with getting this problem fixed. But this case, it was 100% replicable by the merchant, and it was not replicable by us. So we have to think outside the box and evaluate our options and see, okay, what could be different from them to us? And in this case, it was simply the admin user ID. There's your practice test question answer for this week. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you at Meet Magento UK here next week. See y'all later.